The chamber curved like the inside of a great amphitheater, its ceiling glimmering with artificial constellations. Delegates from 27 starfaring species filled the circular rows, their chittering translators humming with the constant noise of political performance. The air smelled faintly of ozone and arrogance. At the center, seated behind a modest black desk that looked laughably fragile in the midst of cosmic diplomacy, sat a human. Young. Too young. Ambassador Callum Ryker adjusted his tie. He looked out of place, like a schoolboy who had wandered into a battlefield of bureaucrats. His jaw was too clean, his suit too well pressed. He smiled far too easily for someone surrounded by beings who had conquered moons and buried enemies under planetary ash. His left hand cradled a matte black thermos that bore the Earth emblem in white, an open palm framed by laurel. He took a slow sip. Steam curled above his lip. The council speaker, a creature made entirely of coiled nerve lattices encased in living crystal, vibrated with disapproval. Ambassador Ryker, Earth's presence today is accepted under conditional neutrality. You have 2 minutes to state your objections. Ryker nodded politely. Thank you, Speaker Venick. I'll do my best to make it entertaining. A chuckle, or maybe a cough. It came from somewhere in the crowd, perhaps the Telari ambassador, a feathered aristocrat who regarded humans as semi-domesticated primates with good comedic timing. Ryker tapped a panel, and a holographic map flared into life above the desk. I've been sent here regarding a seemingly minor matter. Trade restrictions on our outer colonies in the Dalaxian Loop. It's been suggested Earth is using that route to bypass Council tariffs. I assure you, any such allegations are misunderstandings, stemming from outdated star charts, language mismatches, and, perhaps, certain enthusiastic captains. His smile didn't waver. However, Earth would be happy to renegotiate those tariffs, perhaps even provide the Council with updated cartographic data, shipping algorithms, and communication standards, provided we're allowed to continue passage without hostile interference. A three-eyed ambassador scoffed. Passage? Human ships have been arming civilian transports. We've seen the scans. They're war freighters with shopping tags. Ryker tilted his head. If it helps, the shopping was excellent. We're not known to travel light. Laughter. Nervous this time. He pressed again, and another image appeared. Blurred footage of a smuggling station in the ghost systems. Containers were offloading exotic fauna, illegal tech, even slave pods. Ryker's tone shifted. Of course, some among us have taken a different approach to the law. This outpost was raided by one of our patrols last month. No formal protest was filed. Curious, considering half the cargo bore Council registry codes. Murmurs. Several delegates stiffened in their seats. The Telari suddenly looked like they regretted chuckling. Ryker leaned back. Earth would like to request an investigation into those council members with undisclosed holdings in black zones. We're happy to share coordinates. Naturally, if this is outside the council's authority, Earth will handle the matter ourselves. The crystal being known as Speaker Venick did not blink, but its lattice structure pulsed. That is not protocol. No, Ryker agreed, sipping again. But then, neither is slavery. The word hit the chamber like a grenade. Delegates began conversing rapidly in native tongues. A quorum alert chimed. Some protested. Others demanded proof. A few remained suspiciously silent. From the second row, Drox Talcoin watched without moving. The massive reptilian diplomat of the Scythian Dominion was ancient by his species standards, having witnessed 8 coups, 2 failed extermination attempts, and the collapse of 3 intergalactic coalitions. His scales were the color of oxidized blood. His eyes were golden slits. He had never seen a human speak like this. Not without fear. Not with so much control. Ryker spoke again, quieter this time. Earth does not seek conflict. We do not hunger for war or profit. But when our people are threatened, when the law is selectively applied, we take notice. And when we take notice, things tend to unravel. His fingers drummed the desk. We've seen this pattern before. A young species enters the galactic stage. The council pokes at it, probes it, tests it, All in the name of stability. A pause. Then, you should know. Humans don't like tests. We tend to study the examiner instead. The silence was cold and sharp. Ryker stood. I will return tomorrow with Earth's final position. I encourage any of you who've enjoyed business with our enemies to reconsider your investments. He turned and walked away, heels clicking faintly on the polished obsidian floor. Behind him, the holograms flickered off. No one stopped him. No one dared. In the privacy of the council's inner corridor, a message was waiting on a secure display. It was meant for a council aide, but the encryption bore the scent of something darker. Covert orders wrapped in protocol. Protocol 17, unstable variable. Terminate Ambassador Ryker. Arrange incident. Dissolve responsibility. The aide read it twice. His mandibles clicked. That evening, Ryker stood by the viewport of his assigned quarters. The view was spectacular. An ocean of stars swirled outside like a living map. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Young, smooth-faced, almost soft. He hated it. He tapped the thermos against the window lightly, thinking. Behind him, the door chimed. He didn't turn. Come in. His aide, a thin woman in a dark coat, entered silently and handed him a data pad. Confirmation. They're moving ahead with the plan. Banquet tomorrow night. Poison wine if the food doesn't get you first. He nodded. And the secondary? A security failure. Observation deck. Clean hit. Ryker exhaled, then smiled to himself. They're so damn predictable. All these species. So much technology. So little imagination. Orders. He finally turned to her. Let it happen. Her brow rose. He grinned wider. Let them throw the first punch. That's what this has always been. A performance. And we've only just started Act 1. She hesitated. And if they succeed, they won't. His voice changed, just slightly. The warmth drained, replaced by something surgical. You've seen the files. You know what they trained me to be. If they really want to wake the monster. He took a final sip from the thermos. Then I'll show them Baba Yaga wears a suit now. In the lower decks of the council station, 2 mercenaries reviewed schematics of the human diplomat's quarters. Both were ex-military, now highly paid hands for rent. The mission was simple, quiet, political. They'd killed tougher targets. But as they zoomed in on the vent systems, an alert pinged their datapads. One looked down. His scaled hand began to tremble. What is it? The other asked. The first one paled. There's a bounty listed here. For us. From Earth's Intelligence Bureau. What? It went live 1 minute ago. They both turned, weapons half drawn. But the corridor was already empty. Back in the council chamber, Speaker Venick received an encrypted file. It played automatically. It showed footage of the smuggling station, taken from angles only someone on the inside could capture. Faces. Cargo logs. The unmistakable profile of a council member personally overseeing offloading. There was no commentary. Just the soft sound of human laughter in the background. Laughter that didn't stop. Laughter that grew. Venick stared at the screen. Then at the closed door where Ryker had exited earlier. His internal temperature dropped. What have we let in? Drox Talcoin stood silently in his private alcove, watching the same footage forwarded to his personal channel. His claws dug into the polished armrest as realization bloomed. That boy hadn't blinked once during the council session. Not once. And that smile, that was no diplomat smile. It was a mask. By midnight, the order had circulated. An accident was scheduled for the young ambassador. But by then, 3 intelligence directors had already disappeared. 1 security drone meant to track Ryker's movements was found dismantled and reassembled backwards. A single note was taped to it. Nice try. Cute toy. No one had seen Ryker leave his room since dinner. No one knew where he'd gone. But the whispers had started among the aides and staffers. A name from ghost stories, from old war files. A name no one ever dared speak in council chambers. And someone, somewhere deep in the darkness of the station, whispered, "He smiles just like the Baba Yaga." The banquet hall was a marvel of alien opulence. Translucent ceilings displaying slow-turning stars, tables carved from crystallized bonewood, and ambient tones composed by a sentient gas species humming in A-flat. On most nights, it was used to celebrate peace accords and trade deals, or to flatter the egos of delegates with meals no one dared eat. Tonight, it was a stage, and Ambassador Callum Ryker was the intended centerpiece. He arrived precisely 2 minutes late, impeccably dressed in a midnight black suit with the Earth insignia stitched onto a lapel pin, so small most wouldn't notice it. His thermos, as always, was in hand. Several delegates exchanged looks. No security, no staff, just that damned human, strolling in like he owned the stars. He smiled at everyone, bowed politely to the Jarnak High Priestess, shook hands with the Parthan Admiral whose fleet had accidentally jammed an Earth communications satellite last cycle. When the waiter offered him a tall, shimmering glass of violet wine, he simply shook his head and produced a bottle of Earth Red from inside his jacket. "Human enzymes are fussy," he said lightly. "Better not to mix species." Some chuckled. Others stiffened. Drox Talcuin, seated 3 chairs away, didn't laugh. His reptilian gaze tracked Riker's every move. He recognized ritual when he saw it. The human hadn't just declined their wine. He'd insulted it. Quietly, publicly, Riker poured himself a glass and sniffed it. Notes of cherry and subtext. No one knew how to respond. Dinner commenced. Dishes from every quadrant were served, steaming and glowing. Riker barely touched anything but a simple plate of Earth greens and protein. Standard astronaut fare. Safe. Boring. That was the point. Conversation flowed like staged theater. Questions about Earth's cultural diplomacy. Comments on fashion, family units, trade possibilities. Behind the niceties, though, the council moved as one organism. Smiles were knives. Every course a countdown. At exactly the halfway mark, the first clue arrived. One of the hovering service droids began to twitch mid-pour. It dropped a flask. Liquid sprayed across a Telari delegate's robe. Sparks shot from the droid's eye lens as it crashed onto the table, convulsing violently. Gasps erupted. Riker didn't move. His fingers gently tapped the rim of his thermos. A council medic rushed forward, scanning the wreck. A hush spread across the room as readings came in. The droid had experienced a cascade failure due to ingestion of a biocorrosive agent. Trace amounts found in the wine it was serving. Poison. Everyone turned toward Riker. He was still seated, still smiling faintly. "I did try to warn you about human stomachs," he said, sipping from his thermos. "Ours aren't the only ones with sensitivities, it seems." The speaker from the Vec Dominion rose from his seat. "This is a diplomatic disaster. Sabotage at a council-hosted event." "Then we should find the saboteur quickly," Riker said smoothly, standing up, "before they harm someone else. But if you'll excuse me, I've had enough festivities for one evening." He bowed politely. "May your digestion be as smooth as your lies." And with that he left. Drox Talcuin rose moments later, following through side corridors rather than the grand exit. He didn't trust droids or servants, and certainly not tonight. His instincts had shifted from suspicion to something else entirely. Riker had known. Of course he had. But he hadn't exposed them. Not yet. He had let them try. Security officers were already moving discreetly. Surveillance systems were rerouted. The observation deck had been cleared, standard procedure for diplomatic reflection hours, or in this case, an engineered accident. A glitch in the shielding systems would vent the chamber into vacuum. Instant loss of life. Tragic. Regrettable. Deniable. Riker arrived at the deck precisely on time. Alone as predicted. The stars stretched beyond the curved glass like a painting in motion. He stood still for a moment, silhouetted against the void. The assassination team was already in place. For officers in discreet tactical gear, non-lethal at first, in case cameras were still active. They advanced silently, surrounding him. Riker didn't turn. "I was wondering," he said softly, "how long it would take for the council to stop pretending it cared about diplomacy." The nearest soldier lunged. Ryker moved. The man never reached him. There was no sound. Just a blur, a twist, a brief exhalation of breath. The soldier dropped, unconscious. The next didn't even see it coming. Two more followed, one with a shattered visor, the other clutching a broken leg, before Ryker calmly administered a pressure point that ended the fight with clinical silence. He caught one of their comms units before it hit the ground. "Tell your handler," he said, pressing the button, "that this was amateur work. And Earth doesn't forget amateur attempts." He placed the unit gently on the railing. A soft blink of red acknowledged transmission. Then he vanished into the shadows. Back in Drox Talcoin's private quarters, the reptilian received an unmarked package delivered by hand. That, in itself, was cause for alarm. No security system detected the courier. No surveillance caught the drop. Inside the box was a single council-issue medallion, standard issue for elite operatives. And a note. A human sticky note. "Please select your dinner guests more carefully. We're still friends. CR." Drox stared at it for a long time. Across the station, a closed-door meeting had been convened. Not a council session. This was darker, smaller, made up of select species with intelligent ties and plausible deniability. They spoke in hushed tones about containment, about disavowals, about Ryker. He knew, one hissed. He baited us. He was never just a diplomat. No human this young should have that kind of clearance. A projection flickered on. A declassified image. A field report long buried under redactions and myths. It showed a younger Ryker bloodied, surrounded by a pile of weapons and bodies on a sand-swept moon once ruled by warlords. The report's title, Operation Blackgate, Earth Special Strike, Baba Yaga. One of the delegates leaned forward. That was a ghost op. He was listed as a strategic asset, not personnel. He was trained by operatives from 3 species, someone muttered. Survived all 3 programs. Then disappeared from the records. They said Baba Yaga was a legend. No, came the reply. The legend was the only way they could explain him. Meanwhile, Ryker returned to his quarters like nothing had happened. He washed his hands, changed into a fresh shirt, sat at the small desk, and opened a comms line to Earth Command. "Phase 1 complete," he said calmly. The council took the bait. "Understood," came the reply. "Any complications?" "They tried to poison me, then suffocate me. Both failed. Casualties minimal. I left them breathing." A pause. "For now." He ended the transmission and leaned back. On the shelf behind him was a datachip, recently retrieved from a compromised council storage node. It contained the real reason Earth had sent Ryker. Proof of council complicity in a multi-system trafficking network targeting human frontier colonies. That was the mission. Diplomacy was just the misdirection. He turned the chip in his hand and smiled. Not the pleasant, PR-ready smile. Not the diplomatic curve of the lips. This one was real and cold. The galaxy still thought of Earth as newcomers. Loud, wild, perhaps clever, certainly emotional. But they hadn't learned yet. They hadn't seen what humans really were when the masks came off. Let them come, he thought. Let them try again. They still believed he was here for politics. And that, more than anything, made it fun. Outside, the stars burned. Indifferent. Eternal. Watching. The council chambers were silent when Ryker returned. Not a ceremonial silence. No, this was the silence that followed fear. It clung to the walls like frost, crept across the seething tears, settled into the lungs of every delegate present. The human walked in alone, as he always did. His hair was combed back, his suit immaculate, his smile polite. But something in the way he moved made even the older species tense. There was no flourish, no arrogance, just quiet, controlled gravity, like a man who no longer needed to pretend. He walked straight to the center dais, where the light caught the sheen of his black shoes and the edge of his thermos. He didn't sit immediately. He let his eyes scan the room. He was counting, and everyone knew it. Speaker Venix's crystal lattice pulsed in an uneasy pattern. Ambassador Ryker, we were not expecting your return so promptly. Ryker smiled. Yes, well, after surviving dinner, I figured I owed the council some morning conversation. A few winced. It hadn't been made public what happened the previous night, but whispers traveled faster than light. A sabotaged service droid, a poisoned guest, a missing security squad, all unexplained. All somehow traced back to the Earth diplomat who now stood calmly, fingers laced behind his back like a schoolteacher. I've taken the liberty, he continued, of compiling a short list of concerns that Earth would like addressed. A soft chime preceded the flicker of holographic text. Names, coordinates, financial routes, starship registries. Each one was tagged with the sigil of an illegal or restricted operation, piracy, slavery, weapons trades. All cloaked under neutral shell corporations operating in council-protected zones. The chamber erupted in motion. Gasps, angry transmissions, delegates shouting over each other in over a dozen languages. One by one, they began recognizing the data. Ryker's voice cut through it all. I understand some of these operations were meant to be invisible. But you see, Earth takes a particular interest when its citizens go missing, especially when children are involved. A hush fell again. Last year, 3 colonies in the Vexus Fringe went dark. Communication loss. Supply routes hijacked. We were told it was solar activity. Tragic. Unavoidable. Natural even. He took a slow sip of his coffee. We believed you, until we found the second cargo pod. Another image shimmered into view. A broken pod, scorched and floating, with human remains strapped inside. Branded. Caged. I'm told the species who trade in human flesh consider us durable. That's the word used in the ledger we recovered. Durable. Tame. Profitable. Ryker set the thermos down. Our mistake was assuming the council wasn't aware. I've since corrected that assumption. The speaker's voice dropped several octaves. You are accusing this council of conspiracy? No, Ryker said evenly. I'm accusing certain members of this council of profiting from genocide. The rest of you are merely complicit by cowardice. A blast of objection came from the Tharn representative, a bloated creature of oily skin and gas-filled sacks. You come into this hall slinging accusations like a barbarian. What gives you the right to? The right. Ryker stepped forward. I represent a planet that has pulled itself from extinction half a dozen times. We bled for every inch of our survival. We made peace with nature, war, and ourselves. And now, after all that, you expect us to smile and pay taxes while our people are carted off like cattle under your watch. He was no longer smiling. His voice no longer carried charm, it carried weight. We may dress politely. We may sip our drinks and play your games. But never forget, humans learned how to lie after they learned how to kill. You've mistaken courtesy for consent. Drox Talkuin had not moved, but he was watching Ryker with something close to reverence. Or perhaps fear. The other species didn't understand yet. Drox did. This wasn't a speech. It was a surgical strike. Words as weapons. Facts as shrapnel. Every revelation designed to fracture alliances and sow paranoia. Ryker turned to face the entire chamber, now lit in pale blue. His shadow stretched behind him like a scythe. Earth is activating Diplomatic Clause 17. Unilateral enforcement under breach of interstellar humanitarian accord. Effective immediately. You can't, hissed the Parton ambassador. That clause was designed for regional conflicts. Ryker held up a hand. Earth's interpretation has evolved. You'll find our revised legal doctrine attached. And before any of you think about voting to revoke our standing membership. He pressed a final button. A new hologram lit up. It was a star map. On it, 49 Earth starships shimmered into view. They were positioned near key relay systems and comm stations. Not invading. Not attacking. Just parked. Council fleets scrambled to respond, but failed. Every system had gone offline simultaneously. Defense grids deactivated. Navigation buoys scrambled. It was not a siege. It was worse. It was control. Ryker folded his hands behind his back again. We haven't fired a single shot. Haven't boarded a single station. But as of 2 hours ago, Earth possesses full remote override of the Council's quantum relay architecture. How? That's complicated. But it may have something to do with the 22 AI engineers you tried to poach from our tech colonies last decade. A heavy breath seemed to fall over the chamber. Even the air systems felt quiet. Ryker continued. You underestimated us because you wanted to. Because it was convenient to treat humanity as an emerging curiosity. Loud, odd, passionate. You saw our wars, our films, our culture, and assumed we were chaotic. But chaos is just a language you don't speak. He turned to the speaker. Earth speaks it fluently. We simply choose when to translate. The silence that followed felt like a verdict. The Council didn't speak. Couldn't. Some refused to look him in the eye. Others, like Drox, met his gaze fully and said nothing. Ryker leaned down and picked up his thermos again. I suggest we begin drafting new terms. One where Earth isn't a subordinate member, but an equal partner. With veto power. He started walking. Halfway to the exit, a voice called after him. One of the younger delegates, voice trembling. What happens if we refuse? Ryker stopped. Didn't turn. Then you'll learn what humans do when talking stops working. He walked out. Back in his quarters, he removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeve. A thin line of dark ink traced his arm, barely visible beneath the fabric. Each mark represented an operation. Black site deployments. Deep cover infiltrations. A history not found in any Earth biography. Not listed in any Council database. The tattoos went up to his shoulder. He looked at them for a long moment, then pulled his sleeve down, buttoned it, and stared into the darkened glass of his window. On the other side of that glass, somewhere deep in space, were ships waiting for his command. But he hoped he wouldn't need them. Hope, after all, was something humans carried like a knife. Quietly, just in case. His comm chimed. Status, came the voice from Earth Command. Ryker answered flatly. They blinked. Good. Proceed to Phase 3. He didn't smile this time. He just nodded. And then the screen went dark. The stars outside the Council's orbital station glistened with false serenity, unaware of the pressure building within the steel and glass heart of galactic diplomacy. Inside the emergency chamber, smaller, more private than the Grand Hall, tension hung so thick it could have been carved. Around the obsidian table sat 10 species, none of them smiling, all of them staring at the human who had orchestrated the quietest checkmate in interstellar history. Ambassador Callum Ryker stood at the far end of the table. No armed escort. No legal advisor. No weapons. Unless you counted the thermos of Earth coffee he still cradled in his palm like a ceremonial dagger. Before we begin, Ryker said with calm clarity, let's all agree that any further attempts on my life will only escalate the current misunderstanding. No one responded. The implication was clear. Everyone at this table knew he wasn't bluffing. More than that, he wasn't angry. He was calculating. And somehow that was worse. The Jarnak delegate shifted uncomfortably. We acknowledge that missteps were made. Ryker smiled without humor. Missteps. Yes, that's what we're calling assassination attempts these days. Speaker Venick, still rattled, but maintaining the crystalline facade of composure, interjected. What is your endgame, human? That's the problem, Ryker replied smoothly, walking along the length of the room. You all assumed Earth had one game. That we were limited to strategies you could recognize. That we operated like a fledgling race, loud, eager, desperate to please. But we were never playing your game. He stopped at the midpoint of the table. We were studying the board. Drox Talcoin finally spoke, his voice like gravel soaked in oil. And now you control it. Ryker tilted his head. Not control. Influence. There's a difference. The Tharn ambassador snapped, slamming a fist into the table. You've hijacked our relay systems, turned off our comms, frozen half the quadrant's military assets, and exposed illicit dealings of over a dozen council factions. That's not influence. That's a declaration. Ryker turned to him. No, That's a reminder. He walked to the projection terminal, entered a short command, and brought up an image, a single point in space. Council Starpost 7, located at the edge of the Pyra Rift. It was a vital defense station controlling a hyperspace gate. The image zoomed in. The station was dark. No lights. No transmissions. Nothing. Gasps rippled around the table. "It's not destroyed," Ryker said. "We don't do that unless it's necessary. But we did shut it down, remotely. You'll notice we haven't damaged a single hull, haven't spilled a single drop of blood." His tone hardened. Yet, the implication rang through the chamber like a silent siren. Speaker Venix's crystal segments shivered. "Why now? Why show your hand?" "Because you forced it," Ryker said. "Earth sent a diplomat. You responded with poison and weapons. We offered partnership. You saw a vulnerability." He leaned in just slightly. "You saw a smile, and you mistook it for submission." Drox's reptilian eyes narrowed. "Then what is your true mission?" Ryker gave him a small nod, one professional to another. "Now you're asking the right question." He reached into his jacket pocket, not for a weapon, but for a simple datachip. He placed it in the terminal and let it play. Holograms filled the air. Footage from human settlements. Burned-out towns on the edge of colonized space. Children's toys left in the dust. Human bodies stacked in shipping containers, tagged for transport. Council-issued transport logs. Schedules. Receipts. Names. Every being in the room shifted as the truth landed with the weight of a starship. "You allowed this," Ryker said, voice sharpened to a blade. "You funded it. Facilitated it. You signed off on containment strategies that involved human civilians being trafficked like cargo." The Parton delegate's skin rippled in shame. The Jarnak stuttered. "That wasn't authorized." "Some factions." "No," Ryker snapped. "Some people." He let the room absorb the implication. "We could have gone public, shamed the Council, sparked galactic riots. But Earth understands something deeper than chaos, leverage." He looked each of them in the eye. "You don't destroy a system from the outside. You rot it from the inside. Quietly, carefully. And when the time comes," his smile returned, slow and deliberate, "you open the door and let the rot see the sun." The holograms disappeared. Darkness returned. "Earth wants reparations. 57 billion in credit, dispersed to the affected colonies and families. Full transparency of Council trade records. A permanent seat on the High Command. And the dissolution of the Outer Ring Coalition, which we now know to be a front for illicit operations." Venix tried to reassert control. "That would destabilize entire sectors." Ryker raised a hand. "Then stabilize them. We'll help. Earth is very good at rebuilding what others destroy." Silence again. Ryker sighed. "You can refuse. You can posture. But you'll be doing it without communication relays, with half your fleets frozen in orbit, and with 27 Earth warships prepared to deploy surgical strikes on every key Council node. And before you think I'm bluffing," he pressed one more command. Another image appeared, this one showing a series of flashes along a barren moon in Council territory. Each flash was followed by a seismic reading. Controlled detonations. Military bunkers imploding. Without loss of civilian life. Without warning. Precision. Mercy. Message. "Consider that a demonstration," Ryker said softly. "And a courtesy. We won't give another." Venix's light dimmed to a faint blue. "You speak of peace. Yet you threaten war." Ryker took a long sip from his thermos. "Because peace without respect is a leash. We've seen your version of it. Earth prefers something cleaner." The delegates exchanged glances. No one spoke. They were calculating outcomes, risks, trying to weigh the value of pride against the inevitability of consequence. Ryker watched it unfold with the patience of a hunter who had already cornered his prey. Then, from the end of the table, Drox Talcoin slowly stood. His voice was a low rumble. "Let the Council record this moment. The humans arrived as diplomats. We received them as prey. But now we see." He bowed his head slightly toward Ryker. "You were not diplomats. You were shepherds. leading wolves into our house. Ryker gave him a slight nod. You're starting to understand. Drox turned to the room. I support the motion. Comply with Earth's terms. Or you will face more than shame. You will face extinction. One by one, the delegates added their assent. No votes were cast. No ceremony. Just quiet, terrified agreement. Ryker watched. Not triumphant. Not smug. Just resolved. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, he finally allowed himself to sit. He looked out at the stars, now rearranged by the gravity of human action. The smile that crossed his face was small, real, tired. He opened a private channel. Earth Command. Confirming mission success. Council has capitulated. Phase 3 complete. The voice on the other end responded with clipped approval. Acknowledged. Return protocol initiated. But Ryker didn't close the line. He hesitated. Sir, the voice asked. They thought we were naive, Ryker said softly. That we were new. That we hadn't learned what they learned. He leaned back. But humans didn't evolve to be peaceful. We learned peace like we learned fire. Like a tool. Something to wield. The voice was quiet. Any last orders? It asked. Ryker looked at the stars. Just this. Remind them. Humans prefer peace. He took the final sip of his coffee. But we've never forgotten how to hunt. Transmission ended. The lights dimmed. The galaxy was changed. Not with bombs. Not with blood. But with smiles, precision, and one polite man in a suit who never once raised his voice. And now they would remember him. They would remember Earth. Not for its weakness, but for the day it stopped smiling.